Good afternoon, friends, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar focused on helping you prepare and/or actively find a job during what we're calling the new normal. My name is Eric Hulkram from Advanced Local, and here's what we're going to do today. We're going to spend a couple minutes talking about who we are and what we do, and then we're going to turn things over to our career expert who's going to give you some great tangible information, whether you're looking for a new job or planning for that next move. And at the outset, we want to thank our partners, Monster.com, for helping us put this together today. And there'll be a ton of time for Q&A, and you can do that in a couple ways. You can either raise your hand and we'll call on you directly, or you can use the chat box that you can see below you in your Zoom window. We are recording this, which means at the outset of this webinar, you will be able to find this on our online job fair resource pages, so you can go back and watch this and glean some of the information from Vicki if you missed it in the course of the webinar. And then we'll wrap up with some door prizes. And with that, let's get going, shall we? In August, we had 1.37 million jobs added against the record-setting unemployment, which is now down to 8.4%, still higher than most of the Great Recession. And what this does is it changes absolutely everything. It changes the time of the search, it changes the companies who are looking for employees, and it changes the jobs that are being filled, which is why today we're going to hear from career expert Vicki Salemi about how to navigate this current hiring environment, which might be different than anything we have experienced in this country. But before we go there, a few things about Advanced Local and the properties that we represent. So our mission is to build the value of the company over the long term by fostering growth and innovation with a diverse portfolio that you can see here. Companies like Reddit and Discover and the Ironman Group and Condé Nast. And we're also hyper-local. Our publications have been in the communities that they are in for centuries, some as long as 175 years. And that makes us the 8th largest news and information company in the United States. And our amazing journalists have racked up over 700 awards doing profound journalism day in and day out in the local communities that they serve. And now more than ever, that is very important. And so with that, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker for today. You can see here some of the papers that we serve in New Jersey, Cleveland, Grand Rapids, and Portland. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker. Vicki Salemi is an author, speaker, consultant, columnist, career expert for Monster, a global leader in successfully connecting people and job opportunities by unleashing her 15 years of experience in corporate recruiting and human resources. Vicki lives to empower job seekers with insight and firsthand knowledge from the halls of HR. She is the author of Big Career in this Big City and the ABCs of College Life, a regular contributor to the Huffington Post, Forbes, U.S. News and World Report, the New York Post, and Success.com. Vicki is continuously quoted in top-tier business and consumer outlets and segments worldwide, including the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, NBC News, Fast Company, and Women's Health. She's recognized as an influencer and often interviews notable names such as Gloria Steinem, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Judy Blume, Derek Jeter, and Michael J. Fox about their own careers. She is also the creator, host, producer of Media Bistro TV's Score That Job, was named one of the top career bloggers in the country by Blogger, and Vicki is continuously asked for her opinion nationwide. She previously held recruiting and HR management roles at global professional services firms, including Deloitte, McGraw-Hill Financial, and KPMG. A proud alumna, she graduated from Lafayette College with a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology and earned a management certificate from Cornell University. She lives in New York City and is always planning her next trip to Italy. So if you will be so kind to welcome Vicki Salemi. Vicki, how are you today?
I'm doing great, hanging in. How about you, Eric?
I am doing well as well. The floor is yours.
Great. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you all of you for being here. It says a lot about your commitment to finding your next job. So we're going to go on this journey together, and hopefully you'll gain some tips and skills to ace your job search. Next slide, please. Okay, so as Eric mentioned, I'm a former corporate recruiter, and in my last role at KPMG, during the last recession, in recruiting, there weren't that many jobs to hire because everyone was in a hiring freeze. So what my department did was they decided the recruiters would become outplacement coaches. So we became internal career coaches for people who lost their job. And which brings us to the Henry Ford quote, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So yes, we're going to get into the skills about how to look for a job, but it all begins with your attitude. So in that role for KPMG, towards my last 6 months there before I was laid off myself, downsized, basically we were coaching people who had lost their job. And I distinctly remember there were two internal employees, both accountants. Their resumes were practically identical, very similar education, work experience, length of time, job title, everything was pretty much identical. One of them was really distraught, really upset. He was laid off, in disbelief and shock. His wife had just given birth to twins. He was just really upset, and rightly so. The other person, who's very similar to him, was just actually really excited that he was laid off, because he said, well, now I figure I will have time. He was starting to dabble in the stock market. He knew he would get back on his feet very quickly. So he said, I want to enjoy this time off. I'm just going to kind of do what I've always wanted to do briefly, because I know I'll get a new job soon. Well, you can guess who got the new job. I kept in touch with them. The first person, I recommended he go see a mental health counselor, because he had a lot of emotional turmoil wrapped around the job search. And until he was able to grasp that and really get a handle on it, he wasn't thinking clearly in terms of the resume tips, the job searching skills I was providing him with, compared to the other candidate, the internal employee, who literally within 8 weeks during the last recession, he got a new job. And he told me, honestly, it was almost too soon because he was enjoying his time off. Which brings us to your attitude. I told you that example to really illustrate the point that your attitude can be everything. And a study published in Psychological Science shows how positive thinking law students were able to ward off the common cold more easily than students who had a bleaker outlook in life. So your attitude can not only help you with your job search, but also your health, which you'll need to sustain your job search, as well as just your health in general during this pandemic. So positive attitude, positive thinking can help strengthen your immune system, reduce stress and anxiety, lengthen your life, and land a job. That's with an asterisk, because I wasn't able to find any statistics directly correlating to people who have better outlooks in life and positive thinking to landing an actual job. However, based on information such as knowing that law students were able to fend off a common cold more easily than students who had a less positive outlook in life, shows us that your attitude is really where to start, to think that you can do this. People are getting hired right now, and there are companies that are hiring, and they want to fill those jobs very quickly. Next slide, please. We are going to get to questions and answers throughout the presentation, by the way, so just keep that in mind. We're going to break shortly, and Eric will, and our moderator will help us with that. So in order to have a positive attitude, we need to address emotions first and build resilience. So it's reframing. So if you were furloughed, if you were laid off and now you're unemployed, or you're looking for a job as a first-time job seeker, it's just reframing your thought process, realizing that yes, you know, this is the situation right now, it's unprecedented, but in the same token, companies are also scrambling during these unprecedented times for themselves to see what their staffing needs are. So there are several ways you can reframe your thoughts, so then you can really go forward with your job search with full force and energy and positive thinking around it. You can reach out to counselors, mental health counselors, perhaps a career counselor at your alma mater. Sometimes career services on campuses offer free services for alumni or discounted services. So you can reach out to them. Take on a new activity, a new skill, a new hobby that's unrelated to professional pursuits. Maybe you want to learn how to juggle or knit or speak another language or take a painting class online. There are also new skills you can gain through online classes. I know Coursera is one, and I'm not endorsing any one over another, but you can start Googling different online courses about happiness or art history or something to get your mind off the job search. Because as you'll see in our subsequent slides, yes, your job search is your focus right now, but it doesn't have to be something that you eat, breathe, and sleep. There are ways, and we'll get through different tools and job search hacks so you don't feel like it's consuming you. And you know, think about positive thoughts, and then also get back to basics in terms of your sleep, exercise, nutrition, and how you would normally handle stress and anxiety during these heightened times, and really lean into those tools which can help you, which will in turn hopefully help with your job search. Next slide, please. Okay, so Maya Angelou said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So think about your network and think about how you've most recently, even if you're currently employed, how you market yourself, how you carry yourself. Do you say thank you? Do you use manners? Are you professional? All the ways that you can positively make an impact on others' impression on you. Now, you can't control their impression, of course, but you can always do your best to leave a positive impression. So we're going to talk first about a transferable skill set. So what that is taking your current skill set, let's say in one specific job and or industry, and applying it to another. So this way, the recruiter at the other end of the screen who's looking at your resume online will say, oh, wow, total no-brainer. Here's an example. Let's say you worked in the hospitality industry, you worked for a hotel chain, and you were in marketing. Well, chances are you can do two things with this. Number one, your transferable skill sets. Really narrow down your resume to highlight your skills on that resume. I'm assuming customer service oriented, marketing, you probably worked on some numbers in terms of ad campaigns or marketing abilities and your skills, and you can transfer that into a completely different industry, such as, let's say, marketing within healthcare, because we know at Monster that healthcare is one of the areas that continues to thrive in terms of their opportunities right now. Think about those skill sets, customer service. If you, let's say, were a bartender or a waitress and the restaurants were closed where you live, think about those customer skill sets where you can transfer them into maybe a senior living community or something where they need someone who's a server. And think about removing yourself from the industry that you've been in and applying those skills to other industries, and then highlighting that on your cover letter and resume to focus less on the actual employer and the actual industry and focusing more on, okay, I'm going to leave this open-ended because here are my skills and these are coveted by other opportunities in other industries. You're going to leverage keywords. So by that, I mean, here's a little inside baseball for you. Recruiters often work through their company's applicant tracking system, which is known as the ATS. So when you, let's say you see a job online, you apply, on the other end of the screen, it automatically uploads into that employer's ATS. So you not only applying to that specific job, by entering your information, et cetera, into that company, then they own your resume for their data in their database, which means any recruiter in that entire company can do keyword searches. So here's an example. If you're in recruiting, some companies call it talent acquisition, human capital management, or recruiting or recruiter. So you can vary the words in your resume that mean the same thing. So you're using touch points. So if that company, if the recruiter on the other end of the screen types in, they're looking, let's say, for a recruiter who has PhD experience, campus recruiting PhD candidates, they can type in recruiter, or they might type in talent acquisition professional, or they might type in TA or something. You won't know exactly what they're going to type. So it's good to vary the keywords to describe your current role or the role that you're seeking. And what you can do is fine tune that by looking at that company's job descriptions and see how they describe the role. So if you're used to one verbiage or one word or term to describe that, and they're using a different one, try to vary it. So this way, your resume may be easily found by anyone in that company who's searching for resumes with that specific skill set. And the ATS is just how it all works, basically. It's on the other end of the system, like myself. What I used to do is in recruiting is go into my dashboard, see who applied to that specific job. And then also, if there weren't any candidates that were applicable, even though they did apply, I would extend the search and type in different keywords for that specific role, geographic region, and more. Another way to to market yourself is to strengthen your soft skills. By that, we mean, communication skills, listening, empathy. And when we get into how to ace your video interview, we'll get into this in further detail, but think about right now how you can strengthen your soft skills. When I worked in recruiting, my hiring managers all said, if someone has identical resumes, and oftentimes I had very similar resumes for the same exact role, they always hired the candidate who had the stronger soft skills. Could they see them interacting really well with the team? And that means they aced their interview. They had strong intercommunication skills, listening skills. They seem to have strong relationship building skills. So you can do that right now, even if you're working from home, let's say, or even if you're not working in your home. Do try to take an online class, try to reach out to people in your network that perhaps you haven't spoken to in a while, not only to network for a job, but also to keep that skill set sharp. Make the small talk, make the eye contact right now and by eye contact, I mean the lens that I'm pointing to on the screen. And another way to market yourself is to have multiple resumes. So on Monster, for instance, you can upload up to 5 different versions of your resume. And so it's important to do that. Let's say some jobs may overlap different fields. You might want one specifically for marketing, one for advertising, one for sales that may have very similar skill sets. Or you may have a functional one versus chronological. Chronological is the one that is more common. It goes in order of sequence with the most recent towards the top descending downward. However, if you're making a career leap into an entirely new field and you really want to highlight those transferable skill sets, you can have a functional one, which basically connects the dots for the actual skill sets and doesn't really highlight the industry as much. And instead of having a chronological one in order, focus more on the skill sets for those roles. So when the recruiter and the hiring manager are reading your resume, I think, oh, this totally makes sense. And I've seen many people successfully make a career leap into a new field completely by highlighting their transferable skill sets through a functional resume. Next slide, please. Okay, so here is how you can manage your job search so it doesn't manage you, so you can have a life and you can still have your job search first and foremost on your mind without feeling like it's overwhelming. Okay, first, you can set up job alerts on Monster. They're free and they will land in your inbox, and you can have many opportunities land in your inbox. And according to recent Monster data, actually, we're seeing more and more companies open to having their employees work remotely throughout the pandemic and saying, you know what, after the pandemic, if productivity was fruitful during this time, they may extend it. So you may realize your job search may no longer be limited to the geographic region where you currently live or where you're planning to live. You can expand those geographic boundaries, set up those job alerts and think, okay, well, I'm going to have one in my immediate area, maybe one in the tri-state area where you live. I'm in New Jersey and normally New York City. So that would be, let's say, if you're looking in Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and then also remotely. What jobs are available right now that perhaps didn't exist before? In addition, companies are seeing there's a talent shortage. Even though more people have been furloughed and the unemployment numbers are rather high, don't feel discouraged because companies are looking for talent right now. And so they're also expanding their searches thinking, well, if our next awesome hire, meaning you, doesn't live within, let's say, a certain mileage of the office and they can't commute, they may be more open to remote workers than they have in the past, saying, you know what, the job gets done, it doesn't matter where because we're doing it now. Something to keep in mind. Next, apply the same day you see a job posting. Make a commitment to yourself. Let's say when those jobs land in your inbox or you're searching online, by that evening, make sure you apply. Because I can say in recruiting, jobs that I posted did not last very long. If the candidates got applied right away and started interviewing, even when we had more candidates applying, we went through the first batch of candidates in the pipeline. And that first batch were basically the candidates who applied to the job first. So don't wait, don't hesitate. If you're thinking, well, I don't know if I'd want to work there, I want to research them, throw your hat in the ring. You can always withdraw your candidacy later, but you don't want to miss the boat. And also maybe there's someone internally who applied who's probably going to get the role, but the company needs to post it anyway. There's certain things that may happen internally that you're just not aware of. So always apply right away and you can evaluate it later. Maybe a job that you weren't even considering you apply to. And during the interview process, you're interviewing them the same way the employer's interviewing you. And you realize this seems like a great opportunity. I'm really glad I participated in this process and I'm growing into learning more about it. Okay, also have a cover letter template ready to send. Many people, and I completely get it, they may feel stumped and challenged by a cover letter, and then they just don't send the application, they don't submit their resume, which is all ready to go. So on Monster, we have dozens of samples of cover letter templates, so make sure you have one ready, and your cover letter should always have, it should be succinct, should always have the job title, you're applying to, the reference number. So it may be a weird code you never noticed before, but many jobs, if not all, have a reference number, and that's how it's coded in the ATS. And why you would be an awesome hire for that organization. What are your strengths? Highlight the top 3 strengths, or highlight your top experiences or accolades in that cover letter. Doesn't have to be long. It just needs to make sure that it's there, because the hiring manager most likely will forward the cover letter and the resume. The recruiter will most likely forward that to the hiring manager. Next, create an organizational system. Create structure around your search and a system. Maybe that's Excel. Maybe that's reminders in your Outlook or Gmail calendars to follow up with people you're networking with. This way you have everything outlined, you have dates, know when to follow up. Maybe you applied to a job this week and you didn't hear back in 2 weeks, and you have a contact and you want to follow up then. But this way you get a sense of the timing, especially when you start having interviews. Stay positive. Focus on other endeavors. Focus on hobbies. Focus maybe on a project around your house. Anything you can do to focus on, when you're focused on the job search, you focus, but then when you can shut that off, definitely make sure that you can dabble in other interests and other things. Now, in the meantime, build new skills. Like I mentioned earlier, it can mean a professional skill, maybe HTML coding, or learning something that's out of your comfort zone, not only to put on your resume, but just to keep your brain skills sharp. And then also something that maybe you always wanted to learn to cook a certain dish. Leverage this time now to keep your mind off the job search, so you're not thinking, okay, I applied to these jobs, I didn't hear back yet, because you always want to keep moving forward. Next slide, please. Okay, and here's how you can put your best foot forward. Make your online presence relevant and make it count. So really audit your social media feeds and ask yourself, does this look professional? Does this look polished? Should I hide my settings? And you can do that, of course, on Twitter and Instagram. And if you're on Facebook, think about those privacy settings in terms of photos and different things. And if you are looking for a job and you're not currently employed and you want to update your status on these social media sites, including LinkedIn, then absolutely. But I just say that with a word of caution: if you're currently employed and obviously you don't want your employer to know that you're looking. Oftentimes I get the question from people who've been furloughed: should I tell my prospective employers that I've been furloughed? And I say you should, because if you get hired, you always want to make sure you're 100% truthful on your resume as well as job application. And your job application needs to match your resume 100%. So they may ask if you're currently employed, and the answer is yes. And you can say, I've been furloughed. And we'll get into how to pivot in a little bit, but you always want to make sure that you are aware of who's aware of your job search that can help you, and who it may how can potentially hinder you if you aren't currently employed. Maybe you're furloughed and you're worried about perhaps your employer finding out that maybe you're thinking they may lay you off because you're looking for a new job. I've seen many people be they've been furloughed, actively seeking a new job. So again, audit your social media feeds. Ask yourself, is this something I would be proud of for my next employer to see? Would I be comfortable if this was printed on the front page of an advanced local property, both online and in print? And also keep in mind that sometimes, in the age of social media, it's not uncommon to post something professional, like maybe a blog post that you're really proud of professionally, and then post something that you went swimming this weekend and the weather was great. So it's okay to post things that are personal. I just, be aware of your privacy settings and who's seeing what. Focus on what sets you apart. So if I'm hiring you, why would I hire you over another candidate? What makes you special? What makes you spectacular? What makes you different? What defines you? Skill sets, experiences, maybe your ability to learn, your hunger, your excitement, enthusiasm, passion, all those soft skills that can come across, those interests, through your communication skills. What are your selling points? What do you want to be known for? If you're at an event, and let's see, when we have events again, and you're introducing someone, you've met someone for the first time and you're introducing yourself to that person. If someone came along to that conversation, so now there's a third person, and that new person you introduce yourself to, if they're turning the tables and introducing you to that person, what are 2 or 3 succinct bullet points? What's your elevator pitch you want to be remembered for? And that's a good exercise to do even with friends. Pretend that you don't know each other and talk about the top 2 or 3 skills you want to be known for and have them repeat it, because that's when you know you've made an impact. So you always want to be very succinct with what you want to be known for, so it can be repeated. So if you're talking to someone and they can network on your behalf, they'll know exactly who you are, what you stand for, and what you're looking for. Also, on your resume, definitely don't have an objective. You can definitely have an executive summary replace an objective, which is considered a little antiquated. But also know what your mission statement is. What type of organization are you looking to work for? What do they stand for? What's important to you? What are your values? And think of the top 3 words to describe yourself and how you want to be remembered. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to take a time out for questions.
I have one I can give you right now, Vicki, which is how important in this current iteration are cover letters? You just mentioned getting rid of objectives and replacing it with an executive summary. How important are cover letters?
Yeah, cover letters are very important. Now, I should say you should always see what the company is looking for. They may say, send your resume and your cover letter. And let's say if it's an editing job, they might want 3 writing samples, or they may not indicate a cover letter, but it's always important to have one ready. And if you have that executive summary on your resume, copy and paste it. Don't recreate the wheel. Don't overthink it. Just make sure you have a succinct cover letter to go along with it if they ask for it. Many companies will. Some companies right now aren't looking for any type of cover letter. They may be looking more at your social media feeds. Let's say if you're pursuing a job, say in graphics design, they want to see your Instagram feed. They want to see your graphics design. So if you have online samples, you can show that. If you have, let's say, a LinkedIn profile with the link, you can put that in your resume. But with your cover letters, always review the job description and see what they're seeking. But I would say more often than not, it's a great idea to have one ready.
And then one more before we move on. If I've been with a company for a significant amount of time, how do you recommend I note that in my resume? How far back should I go in my resume timeline as to previous position/employers? So if they've been to some place for 25 years, do they add other, I think that's the crux of the question.
Yeah, definitely include it. Here's a rule of thumb. I would not exceed 2 pages for your resume. So you always want to focus on your current experience the most. And then when you go in descending order, let's say, beyond 10 years from now, could be 2 or 3 bullets for each job. I would definitely include them because you want to show progression in that company if you've gotten promoted. If not, let's say it's 2 or 3 jobs over 25 years, then you can have more bullets for each one. But I'm thinking, let's say you may have had 4 or 5 or more jobs within those 25 years. So you always want to include it. I would include all of those years. I wouldn't suddenly make it look like you've only been working for 10 years when you really had that experience for 25 years, because employers are also coveting, like I said, those soft skills, those relationship building skills, that experience. It is really valuable. But I would just be aware of page size and what bullets you need to condense them into so you don't exceed the 2 pages.
Awesome. We can probably move on at this point.
Great. Next slide, please. And we will have more questions at the next timeout. Okay, so mind the gap. So you might have a gap in your resume, i.e. right now. Maybe you were furloughed in May, July, whatever, unemployed. So what you need to do is, everyone knows it's really trying times, especially employers. They may ask you the question just because they have to. Okay, it looks, you were laid off in May. What have you been doing since then? Or let's say it's a year from now and you're looking for a new job a year from now. And you want to have a succinct explanation, then you want to pivot into what you want to do and why you would be great doing it, and give an example or 2. So let's say you worked in aviation and you're not flying anymore as a flight attendant. You can say something like, yeah, I was furloughed in July, but I've been leveraging this time to transfer my skills into customer service interacting role as an online instructor for companies like yours, because my strengths are interacting with people, answering questions, and being really informative. And then you go into what you want to do. So definitely address it, but have 1 or 2 sentences ready, practiced, rehearsed, but also so it sounds authentic. You don't want to sound like a canned statement, but be ready to answer the question. And I should say, during the last recession, 9 out of 10 resumes I saw as a recruiter, everyone was laid off. It was so common. So the question became more of, what did you do with your time off? So it was like, okay, I see that, there was a gap, or you haven't been working since last March. What have you been up to? What are you looking for? And just be ready to answer it. Recruiters expect, unfortunately, right now, we know the state of affairs, we anticipate the answer to be, well, I was furloughed, or I was laid off, or I'm looking, and we understand it. The question is, how are you going to respond to that question? So just be ready for it. Next slide, please. Okay, how to search. Identify what you're seeking and identify where your strengths and the opportunities intersect. So if you've been in an industry that's not doing well right now, look, and I don't want to sound like I'm insulting anyone, but just really goes back to basics. Look where the demand is. And at Monster, we're seeing demand right now uptick within customer service, within business operation roles. So we know at Monster, we know the situation and it's very dire. However, we're optimistic. It can't rain forever. So we are optimistic that as economies in various parts of the country start opening up slowly, methodically, in turn, we're seeing these job openings start emerging as well, specifically within business. We know truck driving, there's a demand for trucking, delivery, logistics, manufacturing, as well as healthcare, all aspects of healthcare. So see what your strengths are, where the opportunities intersect. Start looking at job descriptions online and studying them, seeing what skill sets are coveted. And many, if not all, well, I wouldn't say all, but most employers list the responsibilities and requirements in descending order, most important from the top. So focus on those top 3 bullets. And if you need to rearrange your resume, if you, let's say, already have those same skill sets on your resume, rearrange those so the top 3 bullets of your skills and experiences match and mirror the job description for their top 3 bullets. Think outside the box, work from home. Maybe in the past you never would have considered it, but you've been basically forced, as we all have, to work from home. And now you're thinking, oh, I could do this, or I could do this and maybe have a hybrid role, work from home a few days a week, work in an office a few days a week. So think about what type of role, as well as where you want to do it. And like I said earlier, companies are open to remote working and remote opportunities. Set up job alerts, apply immediately. You can uncover hidden opportunities, and that's through networking and informational interviews. Reach out to a former boss, reach out to people from your network, professional organizations. No, people aren't gathering in person right now, but it's a time to really leverage the phone. And you don't even have to do a video chat. Many people have told me, many job seekers, especially a lot of my coaching clients, have just said, you know, I'm just all zoomed out. And that's understandable. Email someone in your network, set up a quota, maybe 1 or 2 people a week that you're going to reach out to and follow up with, and have one really meaningful conversation each week. You can uncover hidden opportunities. Discover, you know, as you identify your elevator pitch, tell them what you're looking for next, what excites you, what you want to be doing, what you're open to, specific companies, industries, roles. See who they know, and you can uncover a lot of hidden opportunities. And by hidden, I mean, they may not be posted yet. You may make a really positive impression on someone that maybe a job doesn't exist yet for that, but in a couple of months it will. So you always want to seize any opportunity you can, which is right now, talking to people, asking them questions about what it's like working for their company, what type of role. If they knew what they knew now, would they do anything differently? If they hired someone new into their department, what's the top 2 or 3 technical skills that person should have? And then figure out how you can get them. Also, leverage short-term opportunities through the long term. There are a lot of part-time jobs, and that's the thing at Monster. We're seeing a lot of seasonal, especially for upcoming holidays, but in turn, a lot more part-time opportunities than we've seen in the past. And in turn, that may not be your plan A, but maybe now you lean into a plan B. It can get your foot in the door, get some working hours in, paycheck, number 1, paycheck, perhaps benefits, and maybe you want to network. Maybe that can lead into something that's more long-term, or something that's more lucrative, or something that can put skills on your resume that you can have that transferable skill set. And you also want to manage burnout. Like I said earlier, really, really important to make sure that you're managing your mindset and your physical needs, so you don't feel constantly defeated, because this can be a marathon, not a sprint. But hopefully you'll be able to set up systems in place to keep you excited and motivated to land that job. Next slide, please. Okay, so if you're not securing interviews, number 1, don't take anything personally. So much is going on right now. You're doing all the right things. You've got your resume, you've got your cover letter. Post your expertise on social media. You can start blogging and create your own website, even in WordPress, and show your expertise. Connect on social, reach out to people maybe you wouldn't have reach out to before. Conduct an Instagram Live, interview people. Also, there are other things you can do, like I mentioned, informational interviews, but also get that interview suit ready, because you never know when you'll get a call for an interview. And unlike in the past, maybe you would have had to take time off from work and or drive, find a way to commute to the office that may not happen for, let's say, a week. You may be able to have the interview tomorrow. So assume that you will and have that interview ready, suit ready, prepped, pressed, ready to go. Practice your elevator pitch. Identify your ask, really hone in on it. What are you looking for? And that can mean different things. The same way you may have multiple versions of your resume, you can have different asks depending on who you're speaking to. The bullet for seek 2 additional names means every time you're networking with someone, try, before you finish the phone call, ask them, who do you know who, fill in the blank. Who do you know who has the skill? Who do you know who I should speak with? Maybe you want to start a side hustle and you want to learn more about freelancing. Also ask how you can help. It feels really good being able to help people. So you always want to think of that, the give and take of a phone call, of a networking opportunity, and how you can network with the other person and help them. If not now, down the road, and it may be personal, it may not be professional. Maybe they have a question about some home renovation project or whatever your expertise or interest is that you're also talking to them about. Definitely tap into that and just build that connection. It's just good, good relationship building skills outside of the professional world. Stay in touch, thank them, keep the conversation going, keep it flowing. And that's where your Excel spreadsheet comes in handy, or any apps that you're using to organize and really streamline the process so you don't feel like you're overwhelmed by it. Instead, you really embrace it and say, okay, it's Tuesday and I need to reach out to this person. I need to follow up with that person. This way you can keep track of time that way too. Next slide, please. Questions.
So we have a few of them. I'm trying to figure out the best way to organize these. So I'm going to start with Asia's question about bullet points. How many are too many?
Of bullets within a specific job, I'm assuming?
I'm assuming yes. Yeah.
Okay. It's a good question because you don't want to have 20. I would say maybe no more than 10 to 12. And you can combine some, because when you're looking at the bullets, some maybe you can group them. And I should say Monster has a free resume review service. So you can upload your resume for free and get professional feedback. So by all means, take advantage of it. There's also a paid subscription or paid service with professional resume writers. But even if you don't want to invest, just have an extra pair of eyeballs look at it. And the recruiter's not going to count and say, oh, there are too many bullets. But you also want to make sure it's not top heavy and have this one job with like 20 bullets and then nothing beneath it for other roles. So you just want to balance it.
Okay. Next one is it frowned upon to read off of notes during an interview?
It's not frowned upon to read. Well, let me back up. It is, yeah, you don't want to sit there. I'm trying to think. I don't have a paper in front of me, but you don't want to sit there like this and you don't want to read. They can tell when you're reading. What you can say is something like, what I would do is I would prepare bullet points and have them in front of you on a piece of paper. And you can say, that's a great question. I prepared for this. I have a few talking points. Let me just refer to them real quickly. Like, I would call myself out on it actually, because they'll be able to know if you're reading and they want to hear an authentic answer. Like if you ask them about their company and what it's like to work there or what are the perks, you wouldn't want them to like pick up a sheet of paper and
read you the mission statement, right?
Yeah, exactly. You want it to be authentic, interactive. So you can absolutely have talking points and say, that's great that let me just, quickly peek, or you don't have to call yourself out at it, but just, I would have it ready. I would just have these answers ready so you can speak with them. And also you don't want to get caught in reading a script, so to speak, because you may get caught up on some words, and when you're writing it versus speaking it, it may come out differently. So when you're preparing for an interview, you can prep with a friend or a colleague and really start saying things aloud. So, what are your strengths? And you could speak it, because speaking it is maybe different than when you read it on your resume in your head.
Awesome. And I can actually give a hack to this real quick because I'm using it right now. So when I do these webinars, and obviously a lot of these interviews will be done via Zoom, I actually have a music stand that sits right to the right of the camera. So I can see the script that I'm supposed to use, and you can't see me reading it because it's right next to the camera. So if you need to use those notes, get a music stand and put it right next to your camera. And then
that's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Okay, let's see here. What do recruiters want when they ask you the question, what do you bring to the company? So I think they're looking, I know you addressed this a little bit, but I think maybe they're looking for some specifics as to, how do you kind of ferret that out of yourself if you're not great at self-adulation?
Yeah, well, first of all, pretend that you're speaking on someone else's behalf, because we're always a great wingman or wingwoman for someone else. So pretend that someone is like channeling you. And this way you feel like, okay, I am, it's not a humble brag, it's a brag. But secondly, think about what the position is about. So if it's a sales position, what do you bring to the table? Always use quantifiable numbers when you can. Well, last year in my role, I brought in $100,000 of new business because that's what they're going to focus on. Companies are focusing on building their bottom line. So how do you add to that? Or how do you save money? Or how do you, get people up and running and trained and motivated if you were a leader? So really identify what they may be looking for. And more importantly, even if it's hard to identify that based on the role that you're pursuing, speak it with conviction, confidence, excitement in your voice, in your speech, and they'll see that across the screen and they might say, oh, wow, and really show them what you can do. Or like in my current job, within 2 months, I hit the ground running and I built relationships with clients and I had 10 new clients as a result and I managed 12. And what makes you extraordinary? If you were to be rated an exceptional performer on your annual performance review, what would that look like in your current job? And then how do I would communicate that to your future employer.
Awesome. Okay. We've got a couple really great ones here.
Sure.
Is it a good practice to have a look at the interviewer's LinkedIn profile before the interview happens?
Yes, great question. Absolutely. You need to do your research. They're looking you up. Absolutely. Look them up. And you can bring up things during the interview, which is impressive because they might say, oh, wow, Eric really did his homework. That's great. So bring up questions. You might find something in common. Maybe you worked for the same employer 8-10 years ago. Maybe you both were part of a professional organization on college and when you were both in college on campus. You can find some connector as well. So yeah, even though the question may be the next question someone might have is, well, then they can see that I looked at their profile. Okay, so then they saw that you looked at their profile. No big deal, because chances are they're looking at yours too.
That's 100% true. In a world that seems to become mostly virtual, how important are first appearances made over a computer? I think the question is here, do I need to wear a suit and tie or a dress, or how dressed up do I need to be for a Zoom interview?
Absolutely. I would get 100% dressed up as if it's in an office. And even those Zoom interviews now, you might, even if you're working right now and you see it's more casual with colleagues, they're your colleagues. They're not the person that you're trying to make an awesome first impression with. So always dress the part, look really sharp, stay focused from head to toe, not just like a jacket and shorts. I would just really get dressed from head to toe, wear that suit, be ready to shine.
Awesome. Let's see here. Is it okay to bring in humor when we think the interviewers might appreciate it? I don't know how you determine that, but if the moment arises, is it okay to bring in humor into an interview?
Yes, with an asterisk, because of course you don't want to insult anyone. So yeah, I think humor is always great, levity, because also they may be looking for someone, if it's a really high intense job, they may need someone on the team who can add that sense of lightness, who's serious and focused, but also lightness. So I would say yes, and learn to read the Zoom room. Like you can interject a joke, or not a joke, but something humorous, a little bit lighter, and see their reaction. If they're open to it, you'll think, okay, great. And if they shut it down or they're not, you might think, okay, this is not the best approach. But remember, you're interviewing them the way they're interviewing you. If you do use humor and they're not into it, do you really want to work for someone who can't lighten up a little bit? So it's a good test for you. I mean, you might be trying to connect with them and make a good impression, but read how they respond to you and then evaluate from there.
Do you have any, because this is what you do day in and day out, this can be, if you're not used to it, you spend most of your time talking to a camera. So even before the era of Zoom, this was kind of a natural language for you. Do you have any tips for people where this isn't their natural language, where they sort of freeze up, where they can't really get their personality across doing an interview? If I'm being interviewed by you and I'm just like this rigid statue, do you have any tips?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into that in like the next slide or two. But yeah, absolutely. I would find someone who's your most comfortable person to hang around. Maybe it's a relative, maybe it's your best friend, maybe it's someone, I don't know, that you're so relaxed with. I would get on a video call with them and really just be yourself, be chill, enjoy it, have fun. Don't talk about anything about work. Just have like an interaction with that person that you feel super comfortable with. And then hopefully, if you're, let's say, networking with someone, then you can go into having a video call with someone that's professional, not a job interview. I wouldn't just have like a job interview your first one, but to answer that question, Eric, it's about basically how do you get comfortable and acclimated in this new normal, because it will be here to stay for, you know, the foreseeable future. So find a way, find a room you feel comfortable in, get a comfortable chair. Like right now I have a ring lamp in front of me, so you always want to have good lighting and just get used to that. And if you talk on your laptop all the time, it's important to have these Zoom calls especially for a job interview, not only Zoom, but maybe it's Microsoft, whatever avenue the call is. I would do it on your laptop and not your phone. If you do it on your phone, make sure you have a tripod set up, and sometimes it's like closer, and you need to practice with it in terms of the audio, the technical, the height, but just to get accustomed to having a screen and being personable and connect with the other person. First, identify people that you truly connect with outside of work and just really get comfortable with that. And it's cut yourself some slack. It may feel awkward for a while, and then hopefully in time you'll get used to it. And remember, the interviewers they're getting used to it too. They probably didn't do video interviews at all, maybe minimally before the pandemic, and now everyone's doing it. So they're getting to evaluating you too. And they may be thinking, okay, we've had this job open for 6 months now. We really need to hire someone. How do I put my best foot forward in selling the company? They're selling it to you the same way you're selling yourself to them. And hopefully there's a marriage in between for the job offer, but they're in this too. So just, it's something that you'll just hopefully get used to in time.
Okay, so in the interest of time, speaking of time, I'm going to have you go forward, but I will say to you, Allison, your question is amazing. I promise we will get to it, but Vicki, I'm going to have you get going.
Sure. Yeah, we're almost done, everyone. Thanks for hanging in. Okay, how to talk about job loss. This goes back to the slide about minding the gap. Be brief. Your words have power in how you say it. Focus on what you've been doing and say what you've been doing. And reminder to be gentle with yourself. This is a global pandemic, and the employers know that too, obviously. So they're in the same boat with you, because you may say, why is this job been open for 6 months? Like why is it open? They may not be able to fill it. So we're all in this together. So just be ready to talk about it, and then move on to what you're looking for. Okay, ace your virtual job interview. We just, touched upon this: the lighting, seating, no distractions. Try to have it be quiet to your best of your ability. Make eye contact. I used to have a Post-it note. I took it off, but it used to basically have a Post-it with an arrow, and I used to stick it right there so you wouldn't see it. The same way, Eric, you had that music stand as a hack. I used to have an arrow to remind myself to just look there, because if you're thinking, you might be you might be looking all over and then forget to focus. So eye contact's important. Building rapport, small talk, dress to impress. Prepare ahead of time as much as you can. Research the company's about page, research their social media feeds, look up the interviewers themselves. If you find anything controversial, maybe there's rumors about them getting acquired, ask the interviewers, ask them about it, see what they say, ask them why they like working there aside from the people. And during the pandemic, have they furloughed anyone? Have they laid off anyone? Where do they see their company in the next 6 months, the next year? Jot down your questions ahead of time, jot down the answers they give you. And by arrive in quotes, that means arrive early. If you had a job interview at noon at home, for a virtual job interview, you wouldn't just show up at 11:59. If you had it in an office, you wouldn't show up at 11:59. You would show up at least 10, 15 minutes earlier. You would get maybe a glass of water, a cup of coffee, go to the restroom, the whole 9 yards, sit in the lobby, wait. Give yourself at least 15 minutes for your virtual job interview. Go into that area, even if it's in a small, let's say, apartment, and that is your apartment, and there's no door to shut. Just get in the mindset at least 10 to 15 minutes earlier, get in the zone, and get ready to ace it. Next slide, please. Keep going. Okay, so let's say you've had interviews or you haven't and you're applying. Stay focused, organize, be positive. Continue networking moving forward. Tweak your resume. Maybe certain things are resonating, maybe aren't. They aren't. Maybe you have a job interview and you're tweaking your elevator pitch as you're speaking, and you're thinking, oh, that sounds really good. Update your paperwork, update your resume, repeat. And there's no set time frame with a job search. Oftentimes I'm asked by people how many months? I'm like, I wish I could tell you, but I don't know. So the important thing is to keep going. You might be surprised and you might get a job sooner than you're expecting. So what you need to do is just keep moving forward. Consider plan B, consider working remotely, consider maybe going outside your comfort zone, learning a new skill set. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm Italian, and in Italian, "andrà tutto bene" means everything will be okay. So just try to have a positive mindset and remember you've got this. So bouncing it back to some questions.
And we've got some. So as I promised, actually, you know what? I'm going to do this one because it goes back to acing the virtual interview, and then I'll get to Allison's question. So during a Zoom interview, if you're the only one on video, and this will go back to your psychology days, how can they pick up on nonverbals if they're not on, if the interviewers are not on video with you?
So they're watching you.
So like much like, you know, there's people on this that are just pictures, not humans, but you're the only one on video. How can you pick up on nonverbals as if this is going well, this is going terribly, I should tell more jokes, less jokes, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? Well, think about it as a phone interview. It's hard. It's almost honestly a little bit unfair if they can see you and you can't see them. Like it's not a even playing field. Think about it like if you had a phone interview, because you want to really be in tune to their pause. You know, so you need really zone in on, are they pausing? Are they hesitating? Are they using filler words? Listen to their intonation of their voice. If you ask them, why is the job open? You know, did someone get promoted? Did they leave? And they might say, well, like you'll be able to pick up on certain things, but it's hard because they're reading you and they could actually see you. So do the best you can, and then ask them maybe if they can turn their video on. It'd be great to put a face to their name, that kind of thing. And be kind to yourself, because there's only so much you'll be able to pick up, because you won't actually be able to see them.
What do you think it would ever be okay for you to turn yours off then at that point, if they're, you know, sort of setting the social norms of this call?
Yeah, I would say to them, okay, well, if we're doing audio, then I'll shut my video off and then see what they say, because you really want it to be an even playing field. And then you can look at your notes. I mean, there's some benefits, right?
Sure.
In a phone number, you can look at your notes, you can look at your resume, jot things down, and if you're reacting to them, let's say your facial expressions, you're not really monitoring, you're not self micromanaging as much as you would be on a video. Yeah, I think it should be an even playing field, either video for both or phone for both.
Okay, so here's Allison's question. I recently graduated in May of 2020, and I'm looking for a job in pharmaceutical sales. What do you do if a company requires 2 to 3 years minimum experience? This has been my issue with many roles I've applied to, but I don't have the ability to gain the experience. So how do I get over that? And as an aside, right before we did this, I saw on Twitter a social media job where they wanted 20 years of experience in a platform that didn't exist 20 years. So like I think this question, it applies to a lot of people who are seeing these 2 to 3 years, 20 to 97 years. How do you get over that requirement?
Yeah, first of all, Allison, I feel your pain. I know it's a catch-22, right? And it's like, what do you do? So a couple things. I would, if you had a former internship when you were in school, reach out to your intern supervisors and ask them, is there anything that you can do? Was there any experience that you had that could be related to sales that you can talk about? Do they have anything now, perhaps, that it's a remote internship that you can get some hours of experience? I would take a class in sales. So if you're specifically asked about the 2 to 3 years of experience, you could say no, but on my internship, I did XYZ, and I just took a certification in sales class, or I just took a, whatever in marketing and sales. So you can show what you're doing, because employers need to know, like, you won't be able to get the experience without the experience. So also reach out to people in your network and ask them, how did you get your sales experience and how can I do it now? Maybe this means, Allison, you take a part-time job that's not in pharmaceuticals, but it's in sales. Maybe it's not your dream job, dream industry. Maybe you do something working from home within sales, even for a couple of months. So it shows, well, I don't have 2 to 3 years, but I've started doing this now. And this is why I'm so passionate about the pharmaceutical industry. I hope that helps. I know so many people are in this boat.
Absolutely. And it's obviously very tough right now, especially since most internships are on hold because they don't want to do them virtually. So is it wise to apply to jobs that have been open for 10 days or more? Is it a waste of time, assuming the position has been filled and it just has not been removed from said job board?
Absolutely apply. As soon as you see it, apply that day. Let's say if it's on the 10th day and it's still active, because you have no idea. Maybe no one's applied to it, or maybe everyone, you'd be surprised. So, okay, when I worked for one of the big four professional services firms, I don't want to discourage anyone, but I would sometimes get 900 to 1,000 resumes for one job within the first week. Of that amount, literally only 2% were actually qualified. because people were applying and they didn't really care that they didn't meet the qualifications. They'd apply anyway. So immediately I would disqualify the majority of the candidates. So back to your question, if you don't know what the candidate pool looks like, and none of them may be qualified, and that might be why it's still open. So absolutely apply. If it's something you're interested in, go for it. You never know. A similar position may open up next week, and there's a huge, the recruiter already has a pipeline built for not only the original role, but a second role. You don't know what the situation is. Don't overthink it. Just apply.
Okay, and then right on the backs of that, is applying online beneficial? Are most companies hiring within and posting to be in compliance?
That's a good question. Well, what I could speak about is knowing my friends who are still in recruiting, they are, when they're actively hiring, they're not doing it just to be compliant. And it's not often that, it's not every day that internal candidates will be promoted. I mean, we're seeing sometimes, among my recruiter friends, they're seeing some people basically stop working right now because maybe it's too stressful, or maybe they always wanted a career change. And so positions that are available aren't only being filled internally. And again, you don't know. I had one career coaching client who did very well on an interview, and she was just told it was put on hold just for financial reasons. I think they're waiting till January now. So she's going to keep in touch with them and of course interview and elsewhere in the meantime. So you don't know. So I would say if you see the job, apply online, because you never know. And that internal candidate, if there is one, may not end up even working in that position. You just don't know. So I would apply.
Okay. In an application, when it asks if we could contact your prior employer, is it okay to say no?
Yes. Yeah. The companies that are looking, from my experience, if I'm looking for a candidate who matches all the skills and experiences, I'm not going to reach out to a prior employer until you're hired and the background check is conducted. Some companies have different policies. They may do that as a test to see, well, why would they not want me to reach out to a former employer? If it's a current employer, absolutely, it's understandable that you don't want your current employer to.
Sure.
So I think I should rephrase my answer. I think it depends on the company, but if you don't want them to reach out to your prior employer, then I would put no. I don't think it will disqualify you. I mean, that's just
the second part is, does that raise a red flag? Is their second part of their question. So
yeah. Well, it can, but just knowing the volume of recruiters, the volume of resumes that most likely recruiters are going through, especially now, they probably aren't spending more than 5 seconds on your resume and application. And so I don't think it will raise a red flag. And the question you need to ask yourself is, does it raise a red flag for you? Maybe you were fired and you're worried about it coming back that you were fired. So you need to think, if they do reach out to your former employer or fact check your title, your job title, et cetera, your dates of employment, which are usually the top two along with education that are fact checked during your background check. Do you have a response for that if they come back to you and say, hey, this came up? So I wouldn't overthink it, but I would also just be cautious that it may come up, and then ask yourself, why don't I want them to know?
And right now we don't have any other, I don't think let me scroll through real quick. We don't have any questions right this very second, but I have one for you. So in your opinion, how vital is it to be active? If you're open and looking for a job, how vital is it to be active on LinkedIn in your given field? Like interacting with people who are influencers in that field, reading pieces, interacting with some pieces, sharing that stuff?
I think it's a good idea to be active, comment on stories, share them with people, but I would get specific. Perhaps you read an article someone posts, or you post one yourself, and it reminds you of your former boss who had a passion for sailing or something. It doesn't always have to be professional, but maybe there's an article that's interesting about how my skills in XYZ, planning a trip, translate into someone getting a job because they had meticulous time and project management skills. And maybe there's something that reminds you of your former boss or of a colleague. And then I would get specific and start messaging them, inboxing them. Hey, this reminded me of you. Do you have a few minutes to catch up? But I would be active on all channels, because you never know where you may have a connection, not only LinkedIn, but maybe Facebook, maybe Instagram. Like stories, share, comment, and think also how you can make an impact. Because in the process, it might be something, hopefully that's a skill set that you enjoy, that you continue in your next role, because you also want to be positioned as a thought leader or someone who is in your industry as really on the forefront. So by doing this, by posting stories, reposting, et cetera, commenting, hopefully that will be attractive to employers who look you up and see your activity.
Awesome. Well, Vicki, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for the time today. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way? Do you have a preferred channel you'd like to interact with people on?
Yeah, thanks for asking. First of all, thank you for having me. Thank you all for your wonderful questions. Yeah, it would be my email address, which is vicki@vickisalemi.com.
Awesome. Vicki, thank you so much for the time. And we said at the top that we were going to do some door prizes, and we are going to do that right now. And if you were looking for jobs, you can visit our online job fairs and find the jobs that are open in your area. You can see the map here. And as I said, we're going to do some door prizes on the way out today for you to get your very own copy of Vicki's book. And we've got 5 winners today. So we will contact you after the webinar and walk through how we get the book to you. But Lori Dudevetter, you are a winner. Monica Mitchell, Dawei Zhang, Robert Anderson, and James Ricchetti. All 5 of you pick up a copy of Vicki's book. And with that, we are done for the day, my friends. So I hope that you and your family are happy and safe. And if there's anything that we can do for you, we are more than happy to do that. Have a wonderful afternoon. We'll talk to you soon.